Well, good morning, committee. We're going to switch things up a little bit this morning. We will start with bill request. Senator Corson.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. One quick bill request for the committee. It is number RS 0866. This would increase state individual child care tax credit to 50% of the federal child care tax credit. Currently, Kansas is at 25%. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions? Any objection? We'll make the request. Thank you. Committee, we're going to go ahead and start with the budgets and get those worked so we can get them out. I wanted to do that yesterday afternoon and we were not able to. So, so let's start with the Department of Revenue's budget. Committee, are there any recommendations for this budget? Or I'll give you time to pull it out. And while you're looking at it, I do have one recommendation. I am recommending that the $9.8 million be taken from SGF and not from the state highway fund, or delete the transfer of the 12.6 million and make it the 9.8 million that they actually need from the SGF fund. In fact, do you want to read? I can just read it to you. It says add 9.8 million SGF for replacement of embossed license plate FY24. Add language to appropriate the license plate replacement SGF account. Delete the transfer of the 12.6 million from the Highway State Fund and delete the license plate replacement clearing fund. So I'm basically, it's the same money that they would get. We're not changing the dollar amount on the money, but what we are doing is not taking it out of the state highway fund. We're taking it out of SGF. Any questions? If somebody wants to make the motion, I'll be glad to, I can make it. Okay. So it's been moved by Senator Tyson, seconded by Senator Peterson. Discussion on the motion, Senator Holland.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just a question. Just want to consult, just ask revenue if appropriate. If it's not, I'm just curious, do they have any thoughts about, it sounds to me like we're kind of changing the revenue stream from where it's coming from, possibly. Is there any concerns with that? That's my only question, Madam Chair. Thank you.
If you would like to address the committee, Mr. Secretary,
Thank you, Madam Chair. The funding stream for this is all dictated by the Division of Budget. So that's who made the decision as to the funding source.
No, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I didn't do this blind. I did give them a heads up. I was going to make the motion. So, okay. Yeah, I would not want to pull the rug out from underneath the revenue.
As long as the funding is there for the plate replacement, that takes care of an issue for law enforcement.
No, it's appreciated. Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I can concur with that amendment. I think it's very important when we at least having lots of dialogue of where those funds come from. But I'm always cautious when things are removed from the Special Highway Fund, because that impacts our local cities and counties so much that they have to increase their property taxes to meet their needs. So if the Ways and Means or wherever else this goes next, I would certainly support that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Committee, any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Committee, what are your wishes on the budget? Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion we move the budget out. Favorable for recommendation.
Is there a second on the motion? It's been moved by Senator Holland, seconded by Senator Reddy. Discussion on the motion. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was going to, and you were looking to your other side before, and that's fine. But we were told 2 days ago that the Department of Revenue currently has 70 vacant positions. 34 are funded. So it's apparent that they are getting by without nearly the positions that they are authorized. I don't like having vacant positions hanging, or having positions hanging out there, particularly funded positions. And I realize that there's probably an attempt to fill some of these positions, but I don't know how you want to handle it, but I was going to see if the committee desired to reduce the number of FTE positions, particularly since we have vacancies and some are funded vacancies.
Well, for simplicity of the minutes, I would ask that the maker of the motion withdraw and the second withdraw. Otherwise, we can do a substitute motion. Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, I would withdraw my motion to pass out favorably as amended.
Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn by Senator Holland and Senator Reddy. Thank you. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would ask the committee to include a recommendation to the Ways and Means that we delete half of the 70 vacant positions, which would be 35. And I'm not certain how to word the recommendation, so I would leave that up to our fiscal analyst to put in, because 34 are funded. If we delete half of them, we still have 34 funded vacant positions and one unfunded vacant position. Not a really big thing, but again, having vacant positions makes me uncomfortable. I just don't see why we have so many vacant positions in state government
So,
agencies.
Senator, for clarification on your motion, you do not care which half, or do you want half funded and half unfunded? Or I'm not trying to steer you on your motion. I'm just trying to get clarification for Sade.
I appreciate that question, Madam Chairman. So I would prefer that we do it exactly as you indicated. Half, it wouldn't be half of the funded, because I'm wanting to delete 35 positions. So that would be, what, 17 funded and 18 unfunded.
Sade, is that, okay.
So there's
Committee,
still
do you
going to have vacant
understand?
positions.
Yeah, we'll still have 30-some, Senator. Thank you. Committee, do you understand the motion? Is there a second on the motion? Senator, it's been moved by Senator Peck, seconded by Senator Erickson. Committee discussion on the motion. Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, if appropriate, can revenue approach the bench, as it were, and just kind of tell us what the, as with these unfilled positions, what the intent was for these?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Well, as you might imagine, there is a significant amount of turnover in the department, and in particular, driver's license examiners and customer service representatives. And we are, I think at any given point in time, we're probably advertising for almost 70 positions to be filled. We're just having a difficult time filling them, and that's why the vacancies show up as they are. But it's not as if we have a lot of positions that are sitting there that we're not trying to do something with. We actually are.
Senator Holland.
So in essence, basically, you're understaffed as it is, and you need the vacancies to, as you find good people, to bring them in. Would that be correct?
Right.
Okay.
And these positions are changing constantly. And some of you may have had comments from some of your constituents. We are in the position where we are having to move driver's license examiners from one part of the state to another part of the state to cover vacancies. It's just not very efficient because we have additional costs.
Senator Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary, thanks for your comments. I guess I'll be voting against this recommendation because I think as we've talked about, customer service is a big part of what you guys do. And quite honestly, I think you guys know best how to manage the on-the-ground operations of your stuff. And so I don't want to see that customer service component hamstrung. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So where do the unexpended personnel funds go to right now? Are they already being utilized, or are they in a separate fund for these positions to be filled?
Just in our, general budget allocation, the funds are there to the extent that we can find people to fill these positions.
And a follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Senator Reddy.
So if these funded positions are not being filled, are several of your employees filling those positions wearing 3 or 4 hats in them right now currently?
I'm sorry,
Is your current staff filling the obligations of those unfunded, of those personnel that haven't been hired?
not as efficiently, we're not covering the duties as efficiently as we would if we were fully staffed. And you can only stretch people so far for so long. And that's, I think, part of the reason we have such significant turnover in driver's license examiners. That's the one area of the department we have the most turnover.
Thank you. I appreciate your responses.
Thank you. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I really appreciate the line of questioning from Senator Reddy, because I think she's kind of, if you will, making my point. We are still leaving the agency with flexibility on which positions. We're still leaving the agency with several funded vacant positions and several vacant unfunded positions. So I believe that this is reasonable for the agency. As I stated, if they're getting by without these positions filled, and if the funding's just, as the Secretary indicated, part of the general fund, nothing against this particular agency, but agencies tend to spend money they have. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in, oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to close on the motion? Senator Peck?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't necessarily need to close, but just for clarification, the dollar amount is unknown because different positions are paid different salaries. So I'm looking, and I had a brief sidebar conversation with research that we would look at reducing the funding basically on an average of salaries accordingly. So I don't know what that dollar amount is in case someone were to ask that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. Motion carries. Committee, what are your wishes on the budget? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will move that the Senate Assessment and Taxation Committee move the Kansas Department of Revenue budget out as amended to the Senate Ways and Means Committee.
Is there a second on the motion? It's been moved by Senator Peck, seconded by Senator Erickson. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Committee, we do have a point of personal privilege by Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like the committee to know we have Troop 893 from Hayesville up here working on their citizenship merit badge. Welcome to the Capitol.
Welcome to the Capitol and to the Tax Committee. Good luck on your efforts. Committee, I'll turn your attention to Senate Bill 138. I do want to work the other budget, but we have the majority leader in the office, in the audience. So we'll turn our attention to Senate Bill 138. Amelia, will you give us an overview? Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill number 138 relates to property tax and would expand and clarify the property tax exemption for Strother Field Airport. Currently, KSA 79201R provides an exemption to Strother Field Airport Commission for property it owned prior to and on January 1 of 1992. The bill, Senate Bill number 138, would amend this statute to include in the exemption property owned by the political subdivisions that comprise the Strother Field Airport Commission and that is depicted on the airport's federally approved airport layout plan, whether it's used for aviation-related purposes, to promote aviation commerce, or to provide revenue to operate the airport. The statute would also no longer require ownership prior to and on January 1 of 1992. The bill would clarify that the property shall be exempt from ad valorem taxation, and the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Thank you. Committee, our first conferee. Senator, you're not listed. Did you want to testify? No. Okay. Okay, thank you. Sean McGrew, are you online?
I'm a group.
Mr. McGrew? Well, we'll turn our attention to C. Edward Young. Is he here?
I'm actually here by video.
Okay, great. Would you like to begin?
Sure. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 138. You have my written testimony, and the goal of the bill is to amend the Strother Field exemption as memorialized in the statute at 79201R. So you have the testimony, and I would actually like to boil that down to just 4 points. The first is that the creation of Strother Field was a very innovative act that occurred between the cities of Ark City and Winfield to meet the national crisis that was World War II. What I can guarantee you is that no one in 1943 would imagine that the airport would now be generating just shy of $2 billion in economic impact as of the ks.gov study in 2016. Based on salary growth and activity in the field, I actually feel certain that that number is probably well north of $2 billion now. In 2016, the airport generated $154 million in payroll among the 1,500 employees. Those employees generate home construction sales, car sales, grocery sales, and significantly bolster this region. My second point is that the FAA makes it very difficult to develop on airports. While there have been some improvements in recent years in the federal legislation, it still remains a difficult problem for economic development on airports. The ordinary incentive rules simply do not apply. You cannot give away property. While a similar piece of property in an industrial park could be given to a developer for a large enough investment, ordinarily the developer on airport property must be charged fair market value and give the improvements to the airport at the end of the lease. Additionally, incentives must be carefully tailored to avoid economic discrimination among the tenants. At the same time, the FAA requires the airport to be self-sufficient while removing tools from the economic toolbox. The FAA also requires the airport to maintain responsibility for the property that's not easy to boil down. In other words, you have to maintain the height of the buildings, you have to maintain the land use and so forth. So it is very difficult to develop property on airports. My third point is that in 1991, when the legislature amended 79201, the exceptions granted Strother Field recognized that Strother Field was different than the other exceptions that were granted in Q, R, and S. So R is Strother Field, Q and S deal with all other airport improvements. And unfortunately, the language contained, the courts have had to make do with. For instance, the failure to recognize the political subdivisions themselves, and some of the language they've just avoided. The Court of Appeals decision in 2011 was actually a paperwork snafu. It was eventually worked out, but in the interim, it created a jeopardy with the largest tenant on the airport because it was not entirely clear. Almost every year, the cities and airport tenants are put in the position of arguing for the exemptions. The limitation on when property was acquired in R now makes the law somewhat meaningless. These changes would revive the intent of the law as it was passed in 1991. Finally, although we're talking about a relatively small fiscal impact, these changes would put Strother Field on similar footings with developments in Missouri and Oklahoma. In Missouri, the airport tenants only pay on the bonus value for the tenant's possessory interest, which is a super complicated formula, which I would not suggest. In Oklahoma, airport property is simply not assessed. The ad valorem tax is not assessed to Oklahoma property if it's owned by the airport. So these changes suggested are actually a mirror of what the Missouri law is right now, where people can build on airports, and it follows the airport layout plan. So you don't have a massive expansion of the airport. It's only involving the areas that are actually of concern for the airport. And it limits the Strother Field exemption to the property that the airport is truly concerned with and subject to FAA planning requirements. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. McGrew. Senator Holland, did you have a question?
Yeah, but I don't want to go first all the time, so anybody else has any.
You're the first one out of the gate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McGrew, thanks for being here this morning. I have a couple questions for you. Is there some sort of lawsuits currently active on these related tax matters?
So this is actually Mr. Young, and
I'm sorry,
there are-
Mr. Young. I apologize. I just
Oh, I'm
saw
sorry,
that.
Mr. Young, my fault.
Yeah,
My fault.
that was my
It's okay.
fault. Yeah.
There are Board of Tax Appeal requests moving forward right now. As far as I know, and Mr. McGrew will have to clarify, I don't believe that there are any other sorts of lawsuits currently pending.
Okay, so I'll be brief, Madam Chair. I feel really uncomfortable being associated with any legislation that may unduly impact the progression of a case through the courts. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Young? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Sean McGrew online?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Would you proceed?
Yes, do you have any questions for me? I was muted here, trying to figure out how to unmute the phone.
Oh, thank you, and thank you, Mr. McGrew. We do have your testimony. Any questions, committee? Seeing none. Did you want to respond to the lawsuit question?
There are no lawsuits that I'm aware of. Now, we do have one that's in appeal that we drove up, and that is currently, BOTA is reviewing that.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Is there any other proponents for the bill? Any opponents on the legislation? Any neutral on the legislation? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 138. Thank you, committee. Committee, will you turn your attention to Senate Bill 168?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 168 relates to city and countywide retailer sales taxes and would authorize cities and counties to exempt food and food ingredients from their local sales tax that such county or city levies. The bill would amend KSA 12189A to provide that on and after July 1st of 2025, any city or county may exempt the sales of food to the Director of Taxation within 30 days after its adoption. The director then would cause the exemption to be applied at the same time and manner as the retailer sales tax, after confirming that all provisions of law applicable to the authorization were followed. Any repeal of the exemption would be accomplished in the same manner as the adoption. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Senator Reddy, then Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Amelia, or for Eddie, but on the, it says something about Kansas being out of compliance with the streamlined sales and use agreement. And I wanted to know, my understanding from reading this, and that's where I'm kind of confused, is since I'm all in favor of giving them options, and I think that's the right way to go, with this, how does the compliance factor fit into all of this?
Senator Reddy, that would be for research. And Eddie, do you mind?
The streamlined sales and use tax agreement generally requires that states and the local governments have the same sales and use tax base. There is a narrow exception to that for energy products. Food and food ingredients don't fall into that that exception. The bill allows for the state to have a second rate that can apply to food and food tax ingredients, which is what Kansas is currently engaged in as of January 1st, but it doesn't allow for the difference in tax base as it relates to food and food ingredients.
Thank you, Eddie. Any other questions?
I have a follow-up with that.
Sure,
So-
Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when it says the Department of Revenue estimates that more than $80 million in revenue actually could be at risk if Kansas loses its member status. So I'm just a little confused about what does it mean by member status? Does it matter a percentage of our communities have to be streamlined with this, and how all of that option fits into all of it, I suppose?
So, Senator, we actually plan on having a hearing with Streamline, a joint committee and House meeting. We need to get that on the schedule. We're going to have the experts from Streamline come and visit. But in the meantime, our expert is Eddie. And I don't know if you'd like to address, I don't see how this takes us out of compliance, because the intent of the bill is to allow the counties and cities to have the same option that the state has. And the state option did not take us out of compliance. So it's somewhat confusing as to why they would think this would take us out. Eddie, do you mind?
No, I'm circling back around that $80 million, that's in essence the revenue approximately that we collect via the streamlined customer service providers. And so the reason that it would, the phrasing is put that revenues at risk is that tax would still be due to the state. It's just the actual getting it collected that would be in jeopardy at that point. The uniformity issue as it relates to the streamline agreement is specific to the requirement that states and local governments have a uniform sales tax base. If this were enacted, it would in essence authorize local governments to have a different sales tax base than each other and than the state. So that would be the compliance issue.
Okay. Thank you, Eddie. Senator.
Appreciate it.
Yes, Senator Holland.
Just a very quick follow-up question to Eddie on that then. So when we talk about the locals potentially being non-conforming with one another and having the base, does that mean if one county says, hey, we're going to keep our sales tax on food, and another county says we're going to go to zero, does that throw us out of compliance? Or would the fact be that could a county facting say, I'm going to exempt sales tax versus having a tax rate of zero? Is that the point in which you could be out of non-compliance, or do we know the granularity of the issue at this point? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Eddie.
So the granularity of the issue would actually be dependent upon the streamlined governing board's actions based upon whatever were to happen in Kansas. It isn't a situation where we pass a law and instantly just fall out of the agreement. The governing board of the streamline governing body kind of responds to whatever the circumstance is in Kansas.
Any other questions, committee? Thank you, Amelia. Committee, our first conferee was Spencer Duncan, but he is going to written only. The next conferee, Jay Hall. I don't see Jay. We do have his written testimony also. Shelby Ostrom. I don't see Shelby either. Committee, we have the written testimony. Are there any other proponents for the legislation? Seeing none, are there any neutral? Are there any opponents? Seeing none, committee will close the hearing on Senate Bill 168. And committee, I'm going to turn our attention to the Board of Tax Appeals budget at this time. Committee, Kristen, the chairman of the Board of Tax Appeals, is online. If we do have any questions, she is available. Committee, what are your wishes? I'm sorry, did somebody? Committee, what are your wishes on the Board of Tax Appeals budget? Are there any recommendations? You know what, I think we'll wait. Senator Peck, I didn't realize he had a recommendation on the other budget. He may have some on this one too. So we'll wait, and let's turn our attention to Senate Bill 54 to work the bill. Let's go ahead and get started on it, committee. Unless, how about, well, he's got amendments on Senate Bill 8 too. Let's start with Senate Bill 80. Sorry, committee. And for the scouts that are in the room, for your information, what's going on is we are at the time of session where we're trying to work legislation to discuss, debate bills, and move them out of committee. And out of consideration for the committee members, I do know that Senator Holland has an amendment on one of the bills that I would like to work now, but he's no longer in the room. Senator Peck is testifying in another committee, and so we can't work the budget. So we're moving on to Senate Bill 80. Senator Blasey.
Madam Chair, you referenced Senate Bill 8. I do have amendments for that one, if you'd like to do that.
Senate Bill 8, I knew you did, and we're going to come back to it. We're going to do 80 first.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, we can do 54 now that Senator Holland's back in the room. I'm just joking. We're going to go with 80. Yes.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, as a reminder, Senate Bill 80 relates to the recent homestead refund claim provision that was adopted last year regarding a homestead refund for certain seniors and disabled veterans that would exclude Social Security payments from the definition of household income for purposes of determining eligibility. This was the provision that would provide refunds based on the increase in tax due over a base year. And this amendment would amend the definition of household income to exclude Social Security payments.
Senator Corson, did you by chance run copies of the fiscal notes that you had?
I did not. I could talk about them.
Actually, we're going to try to get copies for the committee.
Okay.
So do you have one with you that?
Yeah, so do you want me to discuss it briefly, Madam Chair? Or?
Yes, John will, if you could give John a copy.
Sure.
And he'll go run the committee copies. Senator Corson has some detailed information that I think will help while we're working this legislation. So committee, I'll open discussion. I know that there's going to be amendments. Senator Corson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Should I go ahead and offer the amendment, would you? Is that the appropriate time? Okay. So I do have an amendment, and what it would do is it would increase the qualifying home value would go from, it would have two components. First is the income threshold would be increased from $50,000 to $100,000, and the qualifying home value would be increased from $350,000 to $700,000. And the idea is that that would bring in more folks into this program, which I think is a very good program. I really applaud the work we did last year in getting this enacted. But I think that some of the income and home property values, especially in a place like Johnson County, This is our chance to increase that to bring more people into what I think is a really good program. The other thing that I did is starting in all tax years commencing after December 31st, 2023, the upper limit appraised value threshold would increase each year to reflect the average percentage change in statewide residential value of existing real property for the preceding 10 years. So I thought 10 years was the right look back to give us a reasonable average. To give you a sense of what that would be, so currently the most recent 10-year average for existing real estate, excluding new construction, was 3.99%, just to give you a sense of what that is. So that's the amendment. I'd be glad to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Are there, is that a motion on your amendment then?
Yeah, if there are no questions, I would move the amendment, yes.
Okay. Is there a second on the motion? It's been moved by Senator Corson, seconded by Senator Reddy. Discussion on the motion. Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be curious if the carryover amendment would be willing to extend this to all Kansans by chance.
Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just think that would sort of dramatically, that would be a reshaping of the entire program. I mean, this program, as it was originally, I think, conceptualized, and you could probably speak to this even much better than I could, was targeted relief for our fixed income seniors. That was really the intent of the program. I think opening it up to everybody would have just a gigantic fiscal note, and I would worry about that. So I think that would go beyond the scope of what the original program was intended for, which was trying to provide this relief for our fixed income seniors, making sure that they're able to stay in their homes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would have to agree with the points just made by the carrier of the amendment, because my concern is our state is aging. Our young people will carry the burden of the increase in property taxes if our seniors continue to if their property taxes continue to freeze. If we want young people to stay in our state, we have to make it affordable for them while they're also trying to pay for childcare, college tuition, college loans. You go down the list. This program was designed for seniors on fixed income, low income, and this amendment dramatically increases the number of people eligible, therefore pushes the burden on young Kansans. So I will oppose the amendment. Thank you. Senator
Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the discussion back and forth on the amendment. I'm going to support the amendment. And maybe some additional, as the committee well knows, in addition to the programs targeting seniors, I believe, and I've lost track of the days, Madam Chair, but I know we had before the committee this year and last year we actually passed just general property tax relief for all residential homeowners. And so I would just respond to the senator that we have passed general homestead property tax relief in the form of reducing the mill levies. And so I think those concerns can be addressed through the vehicle that we passed out last year and any further desire by the committee. So we can basically have it both ways. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, thank you, Senator. And committee, what I'm going to do, this is a pretty big amendment, well appreciated to have the discussion. I'm going to, I'm not going to table it because then it would take a formal vote. But what I am going to do is suspend the work on this bill and we'll come back to it, okay, since we're on a limited time frame. Senator Clays will not be with us the rest of the week, but we do have two other senators out that I think would like to weigh in on this also. So let's turn our discussion, I think, to a much less controversial bill, I hope, Senate Bill 41. But I appreciate the data. I would like everybody to look it over, and we'll continue the discussion. And that is another question I have for the committee. We have reserved the room for Monday at noon. We can continue today at noon. We do have a considerable amount of bills to be worked. Committee, what are your wishes? Would you like to meet today at noon and Monday at noon, or just Monday at noon? Monday? You want to put it up for a vote? Okay. You have three options. Let's go, committee. We can eat, yes, oh, there you go. That's great. You know what, let's just do this. We'll meet Monday at noon, and then as time permits, we'll have to finish next week. And just so that you know, and you can adjust your schedule now, I have been asked by leadership for us to meet Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. instead of 9:30. So we will be, Tax Committee will be meeting Wednesday at 8:30. Senator Holland.
Does that mean there's new bills coming down the pipe, or is that just to plan for overflow from earlier, what bills already scheduled, do you know?
The bills that we just got assigned to us late last week and early this week were requested. And so I am doing everything I can to help get that where it needs to be. Senator, Mary, will you give us a quick overview on Senate Bill 41?
Madam Chair, Senate Bill number 41 related to sales and compensating use tax and would provide a remittance credit to retailers in an amount equal to 1.5% of such remittance. There would be a monthly limit to that credit shall not exceed $300 per retailer.
Committee, what are your wishes on the bill? Senator Holland.
I'm not sure procedurally, because I guess I don't know what other amendments, let me just back out a second and say, are there other senators right now, are they planning on offering amendments right now in this bill as we have presented before us?
No, there's not any.
Okay, just, I guess a question, Madam Chair. I do like Senate Bill 41, but I think it's way too rich. I'm glad that the business brought this, but what I'm wondering is that if we could basically focus on just a subset of those retailers, the smallest ones, I don't see the purpose of giving this to the Walmarts, the chains, and all that stuff. What I want to do is that our small, Kansas retailers, the sole proprietorships, the small men and women, as far as small outlets and things like that, being able to utilize this thing. So I just put that before the committee and see if there is a desire to limit that to our smaller proprietors, if that would be of interest. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was thinking along the same thought process, and I'd like to define what small means. Are we talking about a business that has 10 employees, 50 employees, and make sure we are clear on that if that's the direction we need to go? I don't think we need to support more corporations and getting more benefits out of the state of Kansas in this issue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, what are your wishes on the bill? Committee, I'm going to make a motion to pass out favorably as is. I've heard the arguments and the debates. There is a motion before the committee. Is it seconded? The motion's going to die for lack of a second. Seriously, okay. Very disappointing. Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, I guess one is is there a way we could kind of back up that motion and just from the standpoint of just saying, would the committee entertain somebody bringing an amendment to suspend the hearing on this bill and somebody bringing next week an amendment, a proposal for how to do this or not?
Senator, we're about out of time. I understand the debate about favoring small businesses, but I'm looking for a fair and level playing field. When we start picking and substituting, then again, it was just pointed out to us about the senior citizens having a tax break where others don't. And so we're not going to give the corporation the same break that we're giving the small business. That's my position. But if you guys want to bring an amendment, we'll attempt to work the bill at a later time. Otherwise, we're going to lose the bill. Senator Baumgardner. I almost said Senator Molly. Sorry.
I will answer to both, and it's been enjoyable listening on my slow drive in. And I was not an accident on any of the highways.
And thank you for being safe.
So, but I will second your motion.
So, okay, we're back on the motion then. I'll restate the motion then. So it died for lack of a second. I'll make the motion again to move out Senate Bill 41 favorably for passage. And it's been moved by Senator Tyson, seconded by Senator Baumgardner. Discussion on the motion. Senator Baumgardner.
Yes, Madam Chair, I think if an individual wants to bring an amendment on the floor, so be it.
Will absolutely be entertained.
But I think that to do nothing for any retailers isn't necessarily that best option either. So, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Oh, Senator Holland.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and support the motion to get it out of committee, but I'll work with somebody to see the body of the committee of the whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Committee, any other discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll turn our attention back to Senate Bill 54 now that Senator Holland's with us. I do know he has an amendment on the, Amelia's already given us an overview. So Senator, do you want to offer your amendment?
I'd like to offer the amendment that I previously offered and retracted.
You weren't in the room on this one.
I meant from the last time we.
Senate 54, utilities. Okay.
Oh, we didn't, okay.
This is the utilities.
No, we did not, okay.
Nope, this is initial.
Okay. Madam Chair, I have an amendment,
Yes, I know you do.
and Amelia needs to, I was hoping she could hand that out. And basically what this does is it would basically, basically take to zero the sales tax on food. And you'll recall last year, the legislature passed a gradual phase down or reduction of that over a multi-year period. And I want to bring it all home July 1st. And Amelia can explain the amendment. When I asked Amelia to craft the legislation, it was to keep within the same spirit of the original phase down, the same percentages coming out of state highway versus state general fund, but basically just bring it to an accelerated completion as of July 1st. And so she would have be able to address any technical questions about that amendment. And I'm offering this, Madam Chair, because I do support the underlying bill, but to me, this is a priority to the underlying bill. It's the same vehicle subject matter, so I want to bring that to the body's attention. Thank you.
Understand. Thank you. Is there a second on the motion? Seeing none, motion dies. Oh, Senator Reddy has seconded it. So it's been moved by Senator Holland, seconded by Senator Reddy. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay? Nay. Motion fails. Yes, we're back on the bill. Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While I appreciate the amendment, you know, when we passed the law last year, we did it with eyes wide open. And I think the underlying bill and other bills that we have been addressing in this committee are equally, if not more important for Kansans. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate the attempt. Not that I won't support it in another venue, but thank you, committee. What are your wishes on the bill? Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move we pass out Senate Bill 54 favorably for passage.
As amended.
Yes, Madam Chair, as amended.
Thank you. Oh, it wasn't amended. I'm sorry. Sorry.
I knew
That's
his.
fine.
I'm like, is there a prior amendment that I'm not? I knew this didn't go on, but.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam. Is there a second on the motion? Sorry. Juggling too many irons. I'll second the motion. It's been moved by Senator Baumgardner, seconded by Senator Tyson. All those in favor, or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. Would you like to be recorded? Okay, motion carries. Committee, we've got about 2 seconds. I do know we have, is Senate Bill 8? So committee, we are out of time. What I'd like to do, we're not meeting today. We'll meet Monday, and if we need to, we'll meet Monday at noon to finish up as much as we possibly can. And then I would like to continue on Senate Bill 8, Senate Bill 7, Senate Bill 80, and Senate Bill 2996. I really did want to kick 96 out this week, but
Can we do it at the round? Why couldn't we? I know. Madam Chair,
okay. Senator Baumgardner.
is it possible for us to meet briefly at noon to pass out 96? Or
I would appreciate that. Let's just plan on meeting at noon. We have the room, or not this room, we have a different room. We have this room at noon today? Today? I think we have this room or room 142. John will send out notice. And I know we need to announce. I think it's this room, but he's double checking. So while we're waiting on that, committee, I do have a request, bill request. The first one is on PVD directives, that they would have to, instead of just writing directives, they would have to follow the rules and regulations process. So then legislators would at least have a view of what's going on with PVD. Are there any questions or objectives, or objections? Seeing none, I'll make the bill request. We'll be meeting in room 142 committee at noon. Is noon work for everybody or 12:30 better?
42 South?
142 South. We're double checking, but I'm sure that's the room we'll have. And we'll continue working bills previously heard. Any other business to be brought before the committee? Senator Baumgardner.
Just want to welcome our scouts that are here today, and I have some Kansas flags for you before you leave the room. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. We're adjourned.